All right, everyone, welcome back. So in today's lecture, we're getting into echinoderms and chordates. And so we'll start with the echinoderms and we'll finish with chordates, and then I'll tell you about the upcoming lab as well as the exam. So let's get into it. The echinodermata are named for spiny skin. The Greek word echinos means spiny and dermos means skin. So these are spiny skinned organisms. These are your sea stars, your sea cucumbers, sea urchins, the sand dollars, and the brittle stars. They are exclusively marine organisms, meaning once again that they live in salt water. And let's get into some more stuff about echinoderms right now. Adult echinoderms exhibit pentaradial symmetry, and we'll talk about what that is in the next slide. But interestingly enough, their larval stages exhibit bilateral symmetry. And so it's theorized that they evolved from bilateral organisms. So just an interesting theory there. They are given their rigidity by these small calcified parts called ossicles. They do have a true coelom, a true body cavity, and they have a unique circulatory system called a water vasculatory system, and they use it for locomotion, and I'll show you that in the next slide as well. An interesting feature of these animals is that they have the power to regenerate even when over 75% of their body mass is lost. So you can cut off a leg of a sea star and it can regenerate its leg. That's very, very interesting, and not most organisms cannot do that. Here's an example of pentaradial symmetry. So this is 5, and basically their organs are organized in 5 different appendages. Even in the Echinoidea, which we'll see, this is also, you can tell their organs are organized in 5 different parts. So that's pentaradial symmetry. Here is a little bit about that water vascular system. So here is the Madreporite, and the Madreporite is the organ that sucks in water. And if you notice, this water canal, goes down through the legs into what are called tube feet, or little podia, which is just little feet. And it can use bringing in this water and expelling it through the Madreporite to move around. And so let's take a look at what that looks like, if I can get this video to play. You can see bringing the water in through the Madreporite and the 2 feet walking across.
We don't we really use that in summer when we're really, really busy and have enough people to run.
So that's very interesting. Their diversity is divided into 5 classes: the Asteroidea, which are the sea stars; the Ophiroidea, which are the brittle stars; the Echinoidea, the sea urchins and sand dollars; the Crinoidea, the sea lilies or feather stars; and the Holothuroidea, the sea cucumbers. Let's talk about all of those individually. So here is the Asteroidea, and you can tell that these are all of the sea stars. They are perhaps the best known echinoderms. You're probably most familiar with them. They come in a large variety of shapes, colors, sizes, and there's more than 1,800 species known. They have thick arms. Keep that in mind. These are thicker arms that extend from a central disc where the organs actually penetrate into the arms. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Thick arms and the organs go into the arms. They use their tube feet not only for gripping surfaces, but also for grasping prey. They are carnivores. They have 2 stomachs, one of which they basically invert through their mouths to digest outside of the body before they ingest the item. And that process essentially liquefies the prey and makes digestion easier. So kind of gross. Here's the Ophiroidea. These are the brittle stars. They have long, thin arms, you can see, and importantly, the arms do not contain any organs. So that's kind of the difference between a sea star and a brittle star. Here's the Echinoidea, which are the sand dollars and the urchins. And they do not have arms, but they are hemispherical or flattened, and they do have 5 rows of tube feet, which help them in slow movement. So these guys, is when it's dead. This is what it looks like when it's alive for the sand dollar. Here are sea urchins, and they do have tube feet. If you pick them up, if you ever went in the water, you want to stay away from these guys. Those are extremely spiny. But you can pick up something like this. It's not as spiny. And you would feel the tube feet walking along the bottom of your hand. And so this is the Echinoidea. Here's the Crinoidea. Really beautiful. This is the sea lily, I believe. And it's just a really beautiful organism. I'm sorry, this is the feather stars. This is the sea lily. Silly me. The sea lilies have a stalk, and they sort of grow out of not really grow out of, but are attached to rocks. And sea feathers lose their stalks and are free swimming at adulthood. So that is a real organism, and it looks like a feather. Really, really interesting. Here is the Holothuroidea, which are your sea cucumbers. Yeah, it looks like a big poop laying on the ground, but they are living organisms. They're soft-bodied. You can pick them up. If you've ever been scuba diving, I have. Pick them up, and they're really just these small, squishy sacs. Kind of interesting feeling. And they are elongate, and they do have 5 rows of tube feet because they do have pentaradial symmetry. And they have a series of tube feet around the mouth that are modified into tentacles that they use for feeding. Okay, now we get into the chordates, and this word chordate you probably can remember by the spinal cord, and so we're getting to that class, but the majority of the species in the phylum Chordata are in the subclass Vertebrata. These include the animals that we are most familiar with, and there are also a group of animals in the phylum Chordata that are in the different subclass, the invertebrates. Let's talk about what traits make chordates special. So, animals in the phylum Chordata share 4 key features that appear at some stage of their development. The first is a notochord. Then we have a dorsal hollow nerve cord, the pharyngeal slits, and a post-anal tail. In certain groups, some of these traits are present only during embryonic development. Like, for instance, us, we have the pharyngeal slits when we are in embryo development, but not at adults. But some, they are seen in adulthood. The first is the notochord. The chordates are named for this, the notochord. It's a flexible rod-shaped structure that is found in the embryonic stage of all chordates and in the adult stage of some chordate species. In some chordates, the notochord acts as the primary axial support of the body throughout the animal's lifetime. But in vertebrates, the notochord is present during embryonic development. In adults, it's been replaced by your vertebral column, which is the spine. So the notochord is no longer your primary axial support, it is your spinal cord. Then we have the dorsal hollow nerve cord, and it's derived from the ectoderm that sinks below the surface of the skin and rolls into a hollow tube during development. In chordates, it's located dorsally, by the way, dorsally, remember it's on the top of the back, to the notochord, and in contrast, other animal phyla possess solid nerve cords that are located either ventrally or laterally. The nerve cord found in most chordate embryos develops into the brain and the spinal cord, which composes the central nervous system, which is basically your central processing. Then we have the pharyngeal slits. They're openings into the pharynx, which is the region just behind your mouth, kind of like your neck area, and that extends to the outside environment. In organisms that live in aquatic environments, pharyngeal slits allow for the exit of water that enters the mouth during feeding. In fishes, the pharyngeal slit are modified into the gill supports, and in jawed fishes, they are the jaw supports. In tetrapods, that are animals with 4 legs, the slits are further modified into components of the ear and the tonsils, since there's no longer any need for gill supports in the air-breathing animals. By the way, we're tetrapods as well, 4 appendages. Tetrapod means 4-footed, like I just said, and that group includes amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Birds are considered tetrapods because they're evolved from tetrapod ancestors. The postanal tail is the last part, and it's a posterior elongation of the body extending beyond the anus. The tail contains some skeletal elements and muscles, provides a source of locomotion in aquatic species like fish, and in some terrestrial vertebrates, the tail might also function in balance, locomotion, courting, signaling when danger is near. Think of a dog, they're signaling a lot with their tail, if they're happy, if they're scared. In many species, though, the tail is absent or reduced. For example, in apes, including humans like us, most humans are born without the tail. Some do have a vestigial tail that's cut off during right after birth, but it's present in the embryo, but it's reduced in size and also non-functional in adults. Here is an example, and this will definitely be on the exam. 4 spots for you to label 4 of the most important parts of a chordate. So notice this is the notochord. Here's your dorsal hollow nerve cord. And the way that you could remember that is dorsal is above. So here's the dorsal hollow nerve cord. There's the notochord. So the dorsal hollow nerve cord becomes the brain and the spinal the brain and the spinal cord. The notochord gets replaced by the vertebral column in vertebrates. Here are the pharyngeal slits that either become gill supports or jaw supports or become part of your ear and tonsils like in us. And allow water to move once it enters the mouth in aquatic organisms. And here is the postanal tail. Okay, so those are 4 of the most important features of chordates. Let's talk about invertebrate chordates. In addition to the vertebrates, the phylum Chordata contains 2 clades of invertebrates: the Urochordata, which are the Tunicates, and the Cephalochordata, which are the Lancelets. Members of these groups possess the 4 distinctive features of chordates at some point during their development. Here are the Urochordata, which are the Tunicates, very, very simple organisms. These guys are also called sea squirts. The adult forms do not have a notochord, they don't have a dorsal hollow nerve cord, and they don't have a postanal tail. But they do have pharyngeal slits, but at some point during their development, they do show all 4 of those. That's why they are listed as chordates. The larval form possesses all 4 of those structures, but they disappear when they reach adulthood. Most tunicates live in the shallow ocean waters and are suspension feeders, and that just means they eat what's suspended within the water. The primary food of those tunicates are plankton and detritus. Detritus is just stuff that's sort of organic and floating or living or just dying on the ground. And then the Cephalochordata, or the Lancelets. Lancelets possess a notochord, the dorsal hollow nerve cord, pharyngeal slits, and a postanal tail in the adult stage. Lancelets are only a few centimeters long and are usually found buried in the sand at the bottom of warm, temperate, tropical seas. Like tunicates, however, they are suspension feeders. The notochord extends into the head, and it gives the subphylum its name, Cephalochordata. So cephalo means head, chordata for the notochord. Here is a picture of the lancelets, really tiny little guys, and they live in the sand. They're suspension feeders. But they have all 4 of the important chordate structures: the dorsal hollow nerve cord, the pharyngeal slits, the notochord, and the postanal tail. Okay, and so that's this lecture. I want you to prepare for the lab and the exam. The lab is going to be a timed quote-unquote quiz where each question will work like a station that you would have if we were doing this in person. You're going to get images of certain organisms, and there's going to be questions for you to answer and work out. You'll be able to use all of your notes or anything you want. You'll have 2 hours to complete it, so it should be relatively straightforward. But that'll be posted within a few days. Please begin looking over your notes for the upcoming exam as well, and I will see you in the next lecture. Have a good one.